refineries, which is very interesting. Russia in trouble, I guess. We have an article by the Kyiv Independent. Reuters. Russia faces difficulties repairing oil refineries due to US sanctions. There's a lot of talk about sanctions being sort of bypassed, sort of how Russia goes around the sanctions, how it's able to still make a lot of money and continue its war effort, which, that is true. And there are also examples like this of sanctions actually giving us some results. And in this case, the result is Russia is struggling to fix the refineries and those refineries are basically Russia's main source of income when it comes to this war. So I would say that is a big, big problem for Russia. Russian companies are facing difficulties in repairing oil refineries due to Western sanctions, and Ukrainian drone attacks could worsen the problem. Oh no. Reuters reported on April 4th, citing an unnamed source familiar with the matter. So, there you go. We have an unnamed source. Ukrainian forces have launched a series of drone strikes aimed at damaging Russia's oil industry. A total of 12 Russian oil refineries were reportedly successfully hit in multiple regions deep inside Russian territory as of March 17th, which, good, very good. It's a very workable strategy, and it especially could bring effects long-term effects of sort of crippling Russia's capacity to fuel its war effort. There was only one company that knew how to repair the gasoline producing unit at Lukoil PJSC's North Sea plant in Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, which was attacked on March 12. It was an American multinational oil engineering company, UOP, that withdrew from Russia after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 5 sources told Reuters. So already on March 12, the problems began. Only an American company knows how to fix this thing, and there's no more American company. It withdrew from our market. Unfortunate. After engineers were unable to find spare parts for repairs, the whole unit just stopped, according to Reuters sources. Which is a very interesting example of how we are living in a sort of interconnected, globalized world where you have a bunch of equipment in your country, but actually it's being maintained by a foreign company. And should that foreign company leave, you suddenly find yourself in a situation of not being able to repair the stuff you have should it break down, which we are witnessing, thankfully, right now. The unit, which is used to convert heavier hydrocarbons into gasoline, has been out of service since January, and it is unclear when it can be repaired due to a lack of expertise in Russia, Reuters reported. See? Because the experts are from foreign companies. Which I'm a bit surprised that Russia didn't just train its own domestic specialists, but whatever. I'm happy. I'm certainly happy about this development. In fact, I could not be happier. I could not be happier, even if I tried. So yeah. The fourth biggest Russian refinery, North Sea, reduced gasoline production by 40% as a result, two sources told Reuters. The difficulties have been compounded by Ukrainian drone attacks, which hit at least 12 Russian oil refineries this year, according to the news agency industry sources. Reuters estimated that these attacks forced Russian refineries to shut in about 14% of their capacity in the first quarter. And I'm just wondering, how much of that will they actually be able to repair, considering that their lack of expertise and their lack of, well, parts. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak claimed that the damaged facilities should resume operations within a month or two as Russian firms work to produce the necessary spare components. Also, Russia's response to the whole oil refinery attacks was the best in the world. Russia's response of, oh yeah, the attacks on refineries will stop once we get Kyiv. Once we capture Kyiv, the attacks on the refineries will stop. And all I can do when I hear a response like that is, okay, sure. I mean, that's true, but it's not much of a statement, is it? It's a bit of a, what we call in the business, an empty statement. It's a bit of a meaningless, empty statement, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Russian firms work to produce the necessary spare components. The Financial Times reported in March that the US warned Ukraine to stop attacking Russian oil refineries, which very bad move by the US in my opinion. Like, amazing. So we're basically withholding crucial aid that you need, and we sort of also are going to tell you to not do what works. We're just gonna ask you not to. Okay, you just stop. Don't do what works. What works is bad. It is bad to do what works. You shouldn't do it. Allegedly out of concern that strikes could raise global oil prices, allegedly, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on April 2nd that Washington has neither supported nor enabled strikes by Ukraine outside of its territory. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that targeting Russian oil and weapons facilities is a legitimate military strategy and that Ukraine has a right to use its own weapons for self-defense, which, true, and of course, true. It's all true. It's true. All of it. It is true. And that's it. That's it when it comes to this topic. We have reached the final stretch of Russia struggling to repair its equipment because the only guys that were able to do it were of a US company. And that US company has decided to hit the road because of the sanctions. How unfortunate. How completely unfortunate. Yes, I'm so sad. I'm so saddened by these developments that you don't know. You just don't know how sad I am that this happened. Wow. How long has this short stream been so far? 2 hours. We can do something more. I think we can do something more. I think it's okay for us to do more. And then I'm gonna have to leave. And then I'm gonna have to go and do things that are needed of me. What's the nice topic that I could? Russia pounded. Damn. That feels like an interesting one. I guess we'll go with this one. I guess we'll go with the fact, with this little sort of thing that, as you may know, again, we're gonna go back to the whole US is withholding aid. We're not getting any aid. Ukraine is not getting any aid. And from the US. And is actually experiencing critical shortage in ammunition, weapons, anti-air systems, which is sort of right now a big strategy of Russia. Russia attacks cities to overload the anti-air sort of capability while attacking elsewhere, while because the anti-air of Ukraine is so limited, Ukraine has to choose which targets, which sort of places to prioritize when it comes to anti-air. And of course, it will prioritize cities where people live, where civilians live. So it will choose to. And also, within that, also there needs to be additional prioritizing. So within that, Ukraine will also prioritize the bigger cities like Kharkiv or Kyiv, etc. So there already has to be this hard decision making of where to place these systems and how to deploy them, which means that certain places just end up undefended, that certain things are become easy pickings for Russia. And that will continue being the case until Ukraine receives more anti-air systems to defend themselves with. Which brings us to the statement of our favorite minister, foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, Ukraine's allies not giving enough air defense, which it is certainly hard to disagree. Although some countries have made statements that they will sort of look for air defense systems for Ukraine. Germany has certainly made this sort of statement that they will now super look for anti-air systems to give to Ukraine, and some other NATO states have said as much. Western help insufficient given scale of attacks, Kuleba says. Ukraine seeks 5 to 7 Patriot systems to fend off Russian attacks. Minister argues Patriots for Ukraine help prevent wider war. Which, of course, like having efficient anti-air is certainly a huge critical part of Ukraine's defense. That is simply undeniable. I just simply cannot deny that. Brussels, April 3rd. Ukraine's partners are not providing enough air defense to protect against Russian missile attacks, even though they have more than 100 Patriot systems in their own arsenals, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said on Wednesday, which baffles me. It baffles me that there's this growing and very worrying sentiment of we must now gear ourselves up and sort of hoard state-of-the-art equipment because we are sort of semi-preparing ourselves for Ukraine falling and for war. Like, I'm sorry, but all this talk of being in a pre-war period, all this talk of NATO needs to prepare for war in X amount of time, all this talk of we need to prepare for war, is the European Union prepared for war? Is this country prepared for war? Is that country prepared? It all smells at the end of the day of basically saying, oh yeah, we totally need to prepare ourselves for Ukraine to lose, which worries me quite a bit, quite frankly. Especially since this is, I don't know, it feels like some countries are just buying modern weaponry or just sitting on that weaponry. You know? And I feel like a lot of it should be, maybe it's my weird bias, maybe I'm just naive and I don't know how the world works, but I just feel like a lot of it could just be given to Ukraine, or should be even given to Ukraine, and it's not, which is a bit frustrating. Hey Lucy, I read up a bit in FF14 with you. You did great on Samurai, if I remember correctly. Are you Ukrainian? I'm Polish. I'm Polish, and yes, thank you. Thank you. How you do main Samurai in FF14? Yeah. Thank you. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. So, in an interview with Reuters, Kuleba said he would raise the issue of Patriot missile defense systems in every one of a series of meetings with NATO counterparts over the next 2 days in Brussels. In recent weeks, Russia has unleashed an increased barrage of attacks on Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure, underscoring Kyiv's urgent need for protection. See? The fact that Russians can just attack and just disable those energy grids, those, and like those sort of, the energy infrastructure, it just means that there's just not enough anti-air to go around. There's just not enough anti-air to deal with that. Because Ukraine has to decide at the end of the day which parts of Ukraine to prioritize when it comes to anti-air defense. Partners did provide us with their different air defense systems. We appreciate that, but it's just simply insufficient given the scale of the war, Kuleba said. He said Ukraine's partners had more than 100 Patriot systems at their disposal, but had so far not been willing to share even 5 to 7 more. The number that Kyiv says is the minimum needed to provide significant additional protection. Is it such a big problem? Is it not feasible to provide Ukraine with the minimum request? Kuleba asked. Which, fair enough at this point, right? Like, this is ridiculous. This is extremely ridiculous. Like, the only reason why there's any amount of struggling happening on Ukraine's side is because basically the allies are not being allies. There's not the... And there's a lot of talk we will sort of support till the end forever. We will super support. We are with you. We want to defeat evil Russia. Russia cannot win. And then we end up with this. We know that Ukraine is the only thing standing between us and Russia. We know. Oh, but by the way, we should be preparing for war. By the way, we should be preparing to be attacked within X years. By the way, we should be equipping ourselves because we are in a pre-world period. Like, Come on. Come on. Come on. Russia fired over 3,000 guided aerial bombs, 600 drones, and 400 missiles at Ukraine in March alone, President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Wednesday. Kuleba said Russia's attacks in March involved 94 ballistic missiles, which are much faster than more commonly used cruise missiles and harder to shoot down. Come on, guys. I mean, this happens to us every day, Kuleba said, summarizing his message to Ukraine's allies. And the solution is there. It's just an issue of political will. So someone has to make the decision. And the question is, will someone make the decision? Because so far, thus far, the will just does not seem to be there. Which is why, as much as people praise Macron, as much as things are sort of picking up, I don't know. Until I see some visible, tangible action that is more than just going around Europe and having nice political meetings, I just gonna remain a bit skeptical. Like, talk is cheap, but so are empty political gestures, such as meetings and talks. What is needed is tangible action, giving weapons, giving the systems that Ukraine is saying that it needs. Because another problem, which is being reported by soldiers that choose to remain anonymous apparently, is that the West is giving the aid so slow that a lot of the weapon systems requested by Ukraine, by the time they get them, it's sort of, they are already not as efficient as they would have been if they were delivered immediately. Because, believe it or not, as incompetent as Russia is being presented as, Russia does counter those systems. Russia does sort of observe and does sort of, at least to some extent, adapt to these systems. So if the delivery of these systems is delayed and delayed and delayed, and finally they get to the front, suddenly it turns out that their usefulness is highly diminished. I've already read in a few sources that there were soldiers that basically said, we needed the F-16s in 2023. They were crucial for 2023. For 2024, they will not be as effective because Russia is already sort of setting up methods of countering them, you know? And that is also a problem. It is also apparently a big problem. Unaddressed thus far, I might add. Unaddressed. Kuleba said it was not clear to him why allies were so far not providing extra Patriots, especially as Kiev's partners did not face the missile threat that Ukraine faces every day. Exactly. Exactly. It's ridiculous. He argued that such support would help defeat Russia and prevent a larger war across Europe, which war Europe apparently is now preparing for, which, again, frustrating. It is just frustrating, you know? It's annoying. When I say that Europe will be at war and missiles will be falling on Brussels and other European cities. I'm not exaggerating. All of this is going to happen if Ukraine doesn't win the war against Russia, he said. So the best way to save your patriots from intercepting missiles over your countries as your soldiers from dying is to send your patriots to Ukraine and give Ukrainian soldiers everything they need. I mean, that's, yeah. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Moscow has no intent in invading other European countries. Sure. Russian President Vladimir Putin also said he had no interest in invading Ukraine to begin with, but so Kuleb spoke as NATO foreign ministers met to discuss how to put military support to Ukraine on a longer-term footing. Asked about a proposal by NATO boss Jens Stoltenberg, which diplomats say includes a plan for €100 billion fund for Ukraine over 5 years, Kuleba said he welcomed support, but it should represent new funds and not repurpose prior commitments. True. He said NATO had struggled to raise €500 million for a comprehensive assistance package to reform and equip Ukraine's armed forces, so stepping up to $20 billion a year would be a gargantuan effort. If this particular initiative is to become reality, we have to make sure that this will be a new $100 billion. And there we are. There we have it. There we have it. The situation is dire. The situation is not good at all.